To my fellow veterans and to our distinguished guests, on behalf of West Hartford, it's my privilege and honor to welcome you to the 2023 Veterans Day ceremony. My name is Heidi Ann Mooney. I currently volunteer as the commander of American Legion Post Hayes Village 96. Post 96 has been serving our veterans and community since 1922 and is open to all military veterans who have served honorably and to all military personnel currently on active duty. I served in the Marine Corps as an engineer officer in the 90s. If you are a veteran here today, you are not part of our post. I challenge you today to speak to one of us that are here today and try to get involved. We gathered today to honor and express our deepest gratitude to all the men and women who have served in our armed forces, defending our nation and its values. We also want to thank families and spouses who often had homes without their loved ones there. We also want to thank those right now who are in the line of duty. I feel like every year we get to see our awesome service members support our town whenever we're up here. I also want to thank those right now who are in the line of duty in many places around the world. While Memorial Day is to remember those who have died in service, Veterans Day, originally called Armistice Day, is to celebrate all veterans who answered the call to service. It's celebrated on November 11th, the day World War I ended in 1918, when a ceasefire agreement was signed at 11 a.m. In 1954, Congress passed a bill changing Armistice Day to be called Veterans Day, so all veterans were recognized. At this time, I would like to ask Lieutenant Colonel Nolan to offer the invocation. Lieutenant Colonel Nolan is in the U.S. Army Reserves, currently with 436th Transportation Battalion.
Good morning. Please join me in an attitude of prayer. Father in heaven, we invite you to be part of our commemoration. We hold your name in highest honor as we seek to honor those who have made sacrifices and shown willingness to lay down their lives in the service of others, which you have described as the greatest act of love. Allow us to express gratitude to all of our military service members and their families for all the sacrifices that they have made and that only you fully know. And I ask all these things in your holy and mighty name. Amen.
Thank you, Lieutenant Colonel Nolan, for being here today. Commander of the Guards, call your unit to attention and present arms.
All uniform personnel, our attention.
Today, our national anthem will be sung by Bianca Day. Bianca is a graduate of Hall High School, and she's now attending Penn State, studying theater and film.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fights o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free
All right.
Thank you, Bianca. Commanders, stand down your units. Among the heroes that could be recognized today, we want to pay a special tribute to a generation that has come to be known as the greatest generation. In 2011, our community celebrated the service of World War II veterans for a week with recognition of their service. Since then, most of these honored have passed away, and today we want to pay a special tribute to some of the greatest generation of our local community. The greatest generation, a term coined by Tom Brokaw, refers to the remarkable individuals who grew up during the Great Depression and went on to fight in World War II. These men and women demonstrated extraordinary courage, resilience, sacrifice, and their legacy is etched into the history of our nation. When we think of the greatest generation, we remember the selflessness of those who had rushed to enlist after the attack on Pearl Harbor, knowing they faced immense danger, but answering the call of duty without any hesitation. We recall the stories of those who endured the hardship of war on distant shores, separated from their families for years and facing unimaginable challenges. Their sacrifices were not limited to the battlefield. The greatest generation on the home front worked tirelessly in factories and offices, supporting the war effort in every way that they could while their loved ones may have been overseas. They rationed, saved, and lived through hardships with unwavering resolve, all for the greater good of their country. As we reflect on their incredible feats, let us remember that the lessons of the greatest generation are not limited by a bygone era. They remind us of the power of unity, the strength of community, and the importance of selflessness. Their actions set a standard of service and sacrifice that remains a timeless example for all of us. On this Veterans Day, let us pay homage to the indomitable spirit of the greatest generation and to all veterans who have served our nation. Let us be inspired by their unwavering dedication and commitment to a cause larger than themselves. And let us pledge to carry this legacy forward by working for a better, more peaceful world that isn't divided, but that comes together to find peaceful solutions to live side by side. Our next speaker will be Pat Harrell. After graduating from UConn, Pat served as an infantry platoon commander in Vietnam with the 26th Marines and the 1st Reconnaissance Battalion. The 26th was awarded the Presidential Unit Citation for extraordinary heroism in action against an armed enemy. Pat also holds an MBA from UHART. Pat was a past commander of our post.
Thank you. My first step into West Hartford is onto Sterling Field during the summer of '67 between my junior and senior years at UConn. The town's recreation department had held pickup soccer and lacrosse for college-age students to be played on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Now, I was living in Groton at that time. My family recently moved there from the naval base in Charleston, South Carolina. So this was to be a first summer back in Connecticut in a number of years. I had heard about these pickup games from teammates, and since I played both sports, committed to the 80-minute drive on these days to stay in shape. It was also an opportunity to see my girlfriend, who had landed a summer job at St. Francis as an ER intake clerk and was living in Hartford that summer. Carla and I married a few years later after my overseas stint. And then after leaving the Marine Corps in North Carolina, we moved to Connecticut and settled here in West Hartford. I played soccer with the Insurance Soccer League until my 40s. And Sterling Field was our home field and practice, our game and practice field. And later, when our children got into sports, many games and practices for football, soccer, and lacrosse were held at Sterling Field. With over 40 years of use of that facility, never did I hear anything about who Sterling was or why the field was so named. Back in 1943, the town council had voted to name this new athletic field west of Charter Oak School after Sterling. And in 1948, a brass plaque was donated by the Exchange Club and installed, but later removed and misplaced sometime during the 50s. It was not until my involvement with the American Legion in Post 96 in the planning of our centennial for 2022 did I learn the real story behind Gordon Sterling. I'm just curious, can I see a show of hands? How many people know the story of Gordon Sterling? Not many. Gordon Herbert Sterling was the first World War II casualty from West Hartford, losing his life on December 7th, 1941. Gordon was born in Ilion, New York, about 60 miles east of Syracuse, but spent most of his youth in Syracuse. When Gordon was in middle school, his dad lost his job to the Depression, but then found a new one at Underwood Typewriter here in Hartford. So the family moved to West Hartford, living on Argyle Avenue over by Fernridge Park. Gordon graduated from Hall High School in 1937 and enrolled in Trinity College. He enlisted in the service in September of 1940, 1 year after Germany invaded Poland to begin the European War. He attended and graduated from the Advanced Flying School in Alabama and was ranked a second lieutenant in the Army Air Corps in May of 1941. And then assigned to the 46th Pursuit Squadron, stationed on the island of Oahu in the territory of Hawaii. When the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor on that infamous Sunday morning, the first waves strafed all the airfields to eliminate aircraft response. Sterling was located at one of the outer lying airfields, but the attack had damaged most of the aircraft. There were, however, 4 older model fighters, P-36s, parked over on the side of the airfield, which were missed by the first wave, but more were coming. Gordon's status at that time was as an assistant flight engineer. He hadn't completed all the training in gunnery and formations. So he wasn't selected by the flight captain to man those 4 planes that were going to mount a response. So as he watched the drama unfold with enemy planes approaching, one of the designated pilots came back in looking for a better fitting parachute. Gordon saw the urgent need to get that last plane in the air. And without parachute, he raced to the plane and on jumping in, handed his watch to the ground chief saying, "Give this to my mother. I won't be coming back." He was in for the fight. It will do well for us to remember Gordon Sterling's name and his actions. He enlisted before there was a draft. His flying skills helped him shoot down at least one of the enemy planes, and his sacrifice for the war effort symbolizes a man who was willing to fight for something bigger than himself. And I should say, man or woman, and his and herself, since it's no longer gender specific. All are making the commitment and endure the accompanying sacrifices of lost time with family, long absences, and high risk. In a Hartford Courant editorial a few months into 1942, Sterling was eulogized as a man who justified the cost of religious training and the government services that paid for his schooling and sports leagues. A writer argued that the democratic system under which he grew up is worth all that we give to it. Many more would demonstrate their worth in the months and years to come. One of the tenets of the American Legion and a part of our preamble to the Constitution is to preserve the memories and incidents of our associations in all wars and to commemorate the commitments made by our fellow citizens. Today we do this. This day is honored for all veterans in and out of war. But we have some more reminders. I'm very pleased to inform you that there is now a bronze plaque to Gordon Sterling and the 140 World War II veterans from West Hartford who gave their all. It was installed by the town a few years ago, just as the pandemic hit our shores. So the attention to it was lost. We plan to amend that.
Good morning. My name is Mo Fredette. I'm a past post commander of Hazel Lodge Post 96. In her opening remarks, Commander Mooney made reference to the special week our community celebrated in 2011, honoring our World War II veterans. I had the privilege of working on the committee which organized that celebration. Working with a list of over 600 World War II veterans, which were on record with the town, we mailed each of those veterans a letter explaining what we were planning, and then followed up with a call to as many as we could reach. There were over 3,000 members of the greatest generation from our community who served in World War II. And many had stories of bravery and a commitment to our nation, and the conversations shared were inspiring and filled with pride for their service. I want to share a few words about a World War II veteran I came to know over the years. His name, Francis King, a member of the greatest generation. He was born March 18, 1925 in Dorchester, Massachusetts, where he grew up. He graduated from Boston English High School in 1942 and for the next year he worked in support of the war. In May of 1943, following in the steps of his father, he enlisted in the Army Air Corps to serve with the 401st Bomber Group of the 8th Air Force in England. At the conclusion of his basic training, he was sent to Texas for 4 months of training as a tail gunner. It was in Texas that crews were formed and they trained as a team. At the conclusion of his 3rd month of training, he was reassigned to a group ahead of his that was completing their training but in need of a tail gunner. As a tail gunner aboard their B-17, which they named Hell's Angels out of Chute 13, they flew 35 combat missions over Western Europe during World War II. An amazing accomplishment done by very few crews. I had the honor on several occasions to talk to Fran about his service, and the message I always walked away with was his pride in serving his country. During one conversation, he related the story of his transfer to an earlier team from his original team. He stated that he stayed with. In his original team, they were all lost on their first mission over Western Europe. Joining us today is Fran's wife, Claire, and members of their family. Thank you for being here as we honor the greatest generation. For years after his service, Fran and members of his family joined other members of the 8th Air Force for reunions and celebration of their service to our country. For his service to the French Republic and the liberation of France, in 2019, Fran King and Ben Cooper, who is with us today, were awarded membership in the Legion of Honor, that country's highest honor, having participated in campaigns in Normandy, southern France, northern France, and the Rhine. Francis King, a member of the greatest generation. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Jennifer McLeod, and I am the president of the American Legion Auxiliary Hayes Village Unit 96, but I also have the distinction of being the American Legion Auxiliary Department of Connecticut president. During World War II, the amount of women in the greatest generation played a crucial role in filling the jobs of the men who were called to arms. Women worked in the factories, the shipyards, and other industries, taking on roles traditionally held by men. The iconic image of Rosie the Riveter symbolized the millions of women who contributed to the war effort by producing weapons, equipment, and supplies. On the home front, women of the greatest generation took on various responsibilities, such as rationing, fundraising, and providing moral support to soldiers. They managed households and cared for families while coping with wartime shortages and challenges. In the United States, the Women Army Corps, also known as WAC, and the Women Accepted for Volunteer Emergency Service, WAVES, W-A-V-E-S, allowed women to serve in the non-combatant roles. They played official roles in the code-breaking and intelligence work. I want to share with you a story of one of our American Legion Post-96 members, Connie Kane, who served in the WAVES during World War II. She was born in January of 1924 in Holyoke, Massachusetts, the second of 9 children of George and Elizabeth Sullivan, and grew up during the Great Depression in 1944. Constance left for Washington, D.C. to serve first class in the WAVES. She intentionally failed the secretary's exam to get a little bit more interesting job. A ploy that worked. She drafted maps for pilots serving in the Pacific arena. Connie once told us a story of an incident when she was going through training. Being small in stature, she slept. One morning, she was late to responding to the call of reveille. When the drill instructor called out her name, she said she rolled out of her bunk, landed flat on the floor, rendered a hand salute, and shouted, "Present." She always remained a proud veteran and often marched in Memorial Day parades and hung the American flag outside her home, her front door every day. When the war ended in 1946, Connie used the GI Bill to pay for her education at Sargent College, which is now part of Boston University, where she earned a bachelor's degree in physical therapy and physical education. She met the love of her life, Jim Collins, a World War II veteran, captain in the Army Air Force, who was attending Harvard Law School. They married in January of 1949 and raised their 4 children here in Connecticut. There is only one woman whose name is inscribed on this monument. Her name is Mary Alice Odell. She lived on Griswold Street and graduated from Hall High School. In January of 1943, she left her job at Aetna and entered the Women Army Auxiliary Corps as a lieutenant. Mary died May 15, 1943, while serving at Fort Des Moines, Iowa. Lieutenant Odell was the 14th West Hartford service person to die during World War II. Mary Odell and Connie Kane are women from the greatest generation.
Thank you, Pat, Mo, and Jennifer. I do want to say one thing about our auxiliary unit. We have 3 women that run everything for our auxiliary. And that's Jennifer, Elaine, and back there, Jeannie, I see you. And I just want to thank you guys. And I also want to mention, if there's anyone here who's a family member of a veteran and wants to get involved, we love help. They also have a little booth back there about Be the One, and I want to mention what that is. So that is a national campaign on checking in on your veterans due to the fact that there's such a huge number of veteran suicides that happen daily. So Be the One is asking each of you to be the one and check in on your veterans next door or at your local nursing homes. You can always visit. They love having visitors. If you ever need help to do that, you can get in contact with me, and I'm happy to do that and connect you to some of these nursing homes. Our next speaker is Senator Derek Slapp of the 5th State Senate District, serving 98,000 citizens. That might even be more now in West Hartford or in the state and the surrounding cities. Derek makes his home in West Hartford, and so we're always happy every year that he'll share some words with us.
Thank you. Thank you to our veterans. Thank you to our families of veterans who have also sacrificed greatly. You know, I turned 50 yesterday, and on the way up here, our great mayor, who you'll hear from in just a moment, she said, "You are now half of Ben." And so Ben Cooper, who you'll hear more about, I'm sure, and Sherry will praise him a little bit less, but about half. And my initial thought was, no, I am nowhere near even half of Ben. Those of you who know his incredible story, you know what a hero he is, and of course all our veterans. But Ben, was a combat medic, and hoped to help to liberate Dachau. Interestingly, I was at Dachau when I was studying over in Europe, and this was in the 90s. And we all tried to imagine what happened there. Ben, did not have to imagine. So a true hero. So thank you, Ben, for your sacrifices and being such an incredible hero. I just want to talk a minute about something that's it's a very primal need for all of us, and that's a feeling of safety. And if you think about it, that's something that from, right when we're born, our parents are obligated, right, to provide us. And initially we have that feeling of safety and security from our parents. As we get older, we realize that our police and our first responders and, of course, and our veterans, right, play a key role in keeping us safe and giving us that sense of safety. I think sometimes in the United States it can be easy to take that for granted, and especially how our veterans provide that safety for us. That is not the case in Israel. Part of the reason I mention that is I had the opportunity to go to Israel this summer as part of a tour, and I visited the Lebanese border, the Syrian border, and then lastly the border, the Israeli border with Gaza. And at one point, this group of about 11 folks who I went with, we met some Israeli soldiers. They were about 18, 19, maybe 20 years old, young women, about the same age as my daughters. And they were positioned, they were sleeping at their encampment, which was, again, right on the other side of the fence of Gaza. They were protecting an Iron Dome installation there. That was their job, and they'd spent 4 or 5 months out there. And they spoke to us briefly about the meaning, the deep, incredible meaning that they felt protecting their country. And it moved all of us deeply. And since then, and certainly since the terrorist attack in October, I have thought about them every day and hoping and praying that they're still alive. And thinking a lot about their sacrifices and the role that they play in helping to establish a sense of security. And we know in Israel that has been shattered tragically right now. And again, coming back to the U.S., thinking a lot about that sense of security and how important it is for a society to feel that. And when that's taken away, the impact that has, right, and systemic throughout society. And so we must not take our veterans for granted. Right? And as easy as maybe that is for some folks, because our threats, they're different than Israel's threats, right? And sometimes they can see very far away. But I think on this Veterans Day, for me, and I challenge you all to think about what it would be like if we didn't feel safe, right? If we didn't every day, this beautiful, gorgeous fall day, we didn't feel that sense, that of safety, and reflect that we have that because of our veterans, right? And because of the sacrifices that they make every day. And it's so critical that they are not invisible to us. So again, I am so grateful to our veterans and what they provide for us. And let's just reflect on what Ben Cooper has on his business card, that if you haven't gotten it, it is an inspirational card. And it says that, it reminds us that freedom is not free. Ben, thank you, and thank you to all our veterans.
Thank you, Senator Slapp. Our next speaker today is our Mayor, Sherry Cantor, who has been serving West Hartford since 2004, when she joined the Town Council. Mayor Cantor, we're excited to hear your words today.
Thank you, Commander Mooney. Thank you to Hayes Village Post 96 for your leadership. I want to recognize some of my colleagues who are here, Councilors Ben Winograd, Councilor Poulin, Councilor McGinnis, and Board of Ed member Nessarella is also here. We also have many of our town staff leadership here. We have our town manager, Rick Ledwith, our Chief of Police, Vernon Riddick, our Chief of Fire, Greg Priest, and I want to also thank I don't know if our superintendent is here. The sun is in my eyes, so I'm not sure. I can't see who currently is a reserve leader and a veteran, Superintendent Vicinis, and we appreciate his leadership. This is a community led by tremendously committed leaders, and it shows every day. I also want to thank you for sharing the stories, past Commander Harrell, for your sharing the Sterling Field story that we can carry and understand when we're celebrating the athletics and all that happens there, that true heroics that happened, that Gordon Sterling provided to our country. It's remarkable. And Mo Fredette for Francis King. And I appreciate the stories of the women that really contributed to the war effort. My mom's name is Rose. She's 95 years old. And she contributed too. My dad was a World War II veteran. My grandfather, and their bricks are here. My grandfather was a World War I veteran, and I have a nephew that is actually deploying in January. We don't know where, but the expectation is he will be in the Middle East. But it is a globe that is engaged in war, and it is a difficult time to be in service. But good morning. I am happy and honored to be here this Veterans Day, and we're blessed with the weather as well. And this is recognizing the greatest generation. And as you have heard this morning, the contributions that our entire country made to really win a war of incredible atrocities and inhumanity. As you may know, the greatest generation refers to those Americans born between 1900 and 1925, many of whom fought during World War II. These individuals grew up during World War I and lived through the Great Depression and are often the parents of the baby boomer generation. When I think about this group of individuals who served our country during this period of time, I think about my dear friend, Ben Cooper. It was now 101 years old, almost 102. He'll be 102 on Christmas Eve, December 24th. I actually met Ben. This is a personal story. We hosted a German exchange student who was 15 years old. And she came home from school one day, and I have 4 sons, and I was a little nervous about having a girl. And she said, I fell in love today. And I was like, uh-oh, where are we going? And she said, I met a man who is 92, and he told me about things in my German history that I didn't fully understand. And she made me promise that we would celebrate and engage Ben in conversation, learn from him, and meet his partner at the time, Henny, who unfortunately has passed. And we were so grateful to have his leadership and meet his family. Ricky here today is Ricky and Teresa and Cindy and Mike and Tyler, and also sisters Sharon and Nancy, our daughters Sharon and Nancy are not here today, but we thank their family for taking such good care of Ben so we can hear his stories and he can live a message. So I just want to give them a round of applause. I also want to thank Renee McHugh for assisting with some of the facts in gathering Ben's life. Ben was 20 years old when he enlisted in the Army and was trained as a medic. He thought he would be working in hospitals or in medical tents in the field, but instead he was deployed to the front lines where he tended to injured and dying soldiers. He served from 1942 to 1945 in the 45th Infantry Division in Italy, France, and Germany. Like many veterans who returned home after the war, he couldn't talk about the atrocities of what he saw. It wasn't until 1990, 45 years later, when he was invited to speak to students, that he realized he needed to share his story. He suddenly had clarity to his life's purpose: to help today's youth understand the realities of war and remember the Holocaust. When interviewed by Connie Robinson in 2011 for a special tribute to the greatest generation for West Hartford News, he said the most vivid memory was the liberation of Dachau, the concentration camp in Germany. At Dachau, there were 40 single-story buildings built to accommodate 400 people. The space had 1,600. Ben reported that people were incredibly emaciated. The stench permeated the air of the 3-square-mile concentration camp. There were 200 other camps just like this one in Germany and Poland. The ones in Germany were often slave labor camps, and the ones in Poland were extermination camps. He said he was traumatized by what he saw and could not bear to talk about it for 4 decades. During the war, Ben had a small camera. The photos and artifacts he brought back from the war brought his presentations to life. Today, Ben's memorabilia is held at the Hartford Armory, where they are safely stored for future generations. In the years that followed, 1990, he began speaking at schools throughout Connecticut. He dedicated his life to sharing these stories, and with the hope that by advocating for kindness, he could help children and adults put an end to bullying and hatred at any level. Ben would end every presentation with a quote from Aesop's famous story, The Lion and the Mouse: "No act of kindness, no matter how small, is ever wasted." How wise. And after all he saw, his philosophy of life, positive attitude, quick wit, sense of humor, and his many acts of kindness have left lasting impressions on everyone who is lucky enough to meet him. He is a treasure to humanity, and when I say that he is one of my favorite people on this earth, it is so true, and I am so honored to be here today to say these words to honor my dear friend and hero, Ben Cooper. So I want to just give him a round of applause. Ben, you brought the sunshine and the warmth today for sure. On this Veterans Day, I am so honored to share Ben's story and Ben with you, and so glad he is here, and thank everybody in his care. And I invite you to listen to our veterans and learn about their experiences with hopes that one day there will be no more war and peace and love will prevail. But we thank our veterans who have, again, protected our country, because freedom is not free. And we pray for those in current service now. Thank you so much for being here today and making this a meaningful Veterans Day. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Cantor. Thank you, Ben Cooper. Commanders of the Guard, post colors and call your unit to attention to honor our memorial wreath.
All uniformed personnel, out and quit.
The ceremonial laying of a wreath at a gravesite or memorial is practiced around the world. Heads of state, U.S. President,
active military and veterans honor departed members of the armed forces of society by laying a wreath of flowers and gleaming at grave sites and memorials. Today, we lay the memorial wreath, as you can see already in the center of the green, in honor of our brothers and sisters who are not here today with us. Commanders of the Guard, call your units to ready. I would like to take a minute to thank our Color Guard unit, the West Hartford Police Guard Color Guard, under the
Sergeant Chris Life, and the West Hartford Fire Department Color Guard under the command of Lieutenant Ryan Shea, and our Post 96 Color Guard, Mike, Miguel, Jeff, and Rocky. We appreciate you guys being here today. I will now invite Lieutenant Colonel Sean Nolan back up here to offer the benediction.
Please join me in prayer. Lord God Almighty, Father, creator of mankind and author of peace, as we are ever mindful of the cost paid for the liberty we possess, we ask you to bless the members of our armed forces, give them courage, hope, and strength. May they ever experience your firm support, gentle love, and compassionate healing. Be their power and protector, leading them from darkness to light. To you be all glory, honor, and praise. now and forever. Amen.
Thank you, Lieutenant Colonel Nolan. Commanders of the Guards, call your unit to present arms.
All uniformed personnel, out and took. Raise and out.
Taps will now be rendered by Lucas French. He is a Sedgwick Middle School student. Thank you, Lucas.
Order, out.
I want to take a second to mention a word about dedication and commitment to our communities. This year, our auxiliary member, Jeannie Berry, celebrates 35 years of service to our auxiliary, Hayes Village Post 96. It's really important, I think, to give back to your community and volunteer. If you were not able to serve in the military, but you want to give back to your community, as you go through the next few days, I want you to think about how you can serve your country, your community, your schools, and your youth. If you are not volunteering your time in some way right now, consider this week to take up that call and just do something about it. I call each one of you here today to take action in our community who can benefit greatly from this service. Like Jeannie, who's dedicated 35 years to the auxiliary, there's always places to give back to your community. Thank you for being here today to honor many of America's heroes that stand among us and have kept our country free. May God bless and protect our servicemen and women who are in harm's way in defending our freedoms at this very moment, all around the world, from acts of terrorism and from wars on foreign soil. May God bless their efforts to bring peace, and may God bless the United States of America. Today is an important but symbolic way of saying thank you and remembering the legacy of veterans because of what these women and men have done for us. Women and men like Ben Cooper. Saying thank you is an acknowledgement of all the burdens and scars that veterans may live with every day of the year. Thank you today for joining us as we celebrate 2023 Veterans Day in West Hartford. We will have some refreshments, cookies and apple cider across the street here at the First Church. So if anyone has some time and wants some community, we'd love to have you guys come over there after this. Have a great day. When you go over to First Church, the cookies and cider are in the auditorium, which is around the back. We'll make sure the door's open and you can find us.